Hey guys, welcome back to more political chatter. In today's video, we will be talking about the Sunbelt. The Sunbelt in the 2024 presidential election, a very interesting region of the country electorally, a region that Joe Biden performed solidly in the 2020 election, that is at least compared to expectations, relative to expectations compared to the Rust Belt states. While he really underperformed expectations in polling, in forecasts, by every metric, Joe Biden in the 2020 election really underperformed results in the Rust Belt. He didn't as much in the Sun Belt. In Georgia, no Democrat won the state of Georgia since the election of, 1992, I believe, when Bill Clinton won. Again, 1992. That's 28 years ago from 2020. So that was a real shock. He was able to flip the pretty solidly Republican state of Arizona. The last time that one went Democratic was in 1996 with Bill Clinton. So Joe Biden was really able to build up a coalition in these Sunbelt states like we hadn't seen in decades and decades, while they really underperformed in the Rust Belt. So this video is going to be about how Kamala Harris, her path to victory, as much as Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, as important as these states are with their high number of electoral college votes, as important those states might be, the path to victory really might be in the Sun Belt, and it really might affect elections, how Democrats perform in presidential and, down ballot elections for decades to come, because this is a very trending left region of the nation. Let's just take a look at something. This is extremely interesting. On this website, we can compare past election results. So you can see the trend from a certain presidential election compared to any other presidential election. So for example, if I could get it working here, I'm trying to. Here it is. So we can see how each state trended from the 2012 presidential election to the 2020 presidential election. So for example, I'll bring up Indiana just because it's random. Indiana became about 5.9% more Republican from 2012 to 2020. New York became 5 points more Republican. Now look, you might notice the majority of the country is more Republican, right? Because Mitt Romney, this was 2012, Mitt Romney was a weak candidate. Barack Obama won re-election. At least Romney was weak compared to Donald Trump, right? In 2020, Donald Trump is a very strong candidate compared to other Republican presidential candidates. But look at the region of the country. You see that trended most towards the Democrats. What's the only region of the country that almost solidly became more blue, especially among the battleground states in this region? It's certainly not the Rust Belt. Wisconsin became 6 points more Republican. Michigan, 6.7 points. Pennsylvania, 4.2 points. No, it was the Sun Belt. We see Arizona from 2012 to 2020. This is insane. It became 9.4% more Democratic, not Republican. Texas, 10 points, and a stunning 10 points more Democratic from 2012 to 2020. Georgia, a stunning 8 points. North Carolina even trended a little bit towards the Democrats, but still in the right direction for the Democrats. 0.7%. Virginia, +6 for the Democrats. Even California, right? Safe blue in both elections, but California voted 6 points more Democratic. So you see that the only battleground state, there are two. Only two out of the, out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, battleground states in the Sun Belt region, or even 7 with Virginia, only 2 of them became more Republican, and it was by extremely marginal amounts. Nevada became 4 points more Republican, and then Florida became 4 points more Republican. Nothing compared to the 10 points more Democratic in Texas. Nothing compared to the 8 points more Democratic in Georgia. It's right here in the numbers. The Sun Belt is becoming more Democratic, maybe even more stunning. As we take a closer look, just as an example in one of these states, that being the state of Texas, what we have seen in the suburbs around Dallas, Texas, the most populous county in the state of Texas, what we have seen in the suburbs surrounding Dallas is really incredible. It's something that you really don't typically see very often. We see in the we'll go back to 2012, because it's, before the Trump era. You might notice from 2012 to 2020, look at those suburbs. These are heavily populated, important suburbs around Texas. All three of them around Dallas County, all three of the suburban counties were solidly Republican in 2012. Tarrant was Romney plus 16, Denton was Romney plus 32, and Collin was Romney plus 32 as well. 4 years later, now this was 2016, the nation as a whole became more Republican. But you see, Tarrant went from, what was it in the first, in 2012? It was Romney plus 16. It was reduced to only Romney plus 9, so you start to see some cracks. But still, Denton is still safe, but it went from 31 to 20. Collin went from 32 to 17, but it's still safe. And then there was that real just break in the dam in 2020. You know, Hillary Clinton was a weak candidate. And then look at 2020. We see that Tarrant County flipped blue. In 2012, it voted for Mitt Romney by 16 points. Just 8 years later, it would go on to vote Democratic. It voted for Joe Biden by 0.2%. Denton would vote for Trump by 8. That one went from 31, or 32 even, to 8. That's insane. And even more stunning is Collin County. It voted for Mitt Romney by 31.5. 8 years later, it would vote for Trump by 4.4%. So, it's mostly centered around the suburbs, obviously, because Democrats aren't making huge gains with Latino voters, especially in Florida. That's why Florida has become more Republican. But these states, especially across the Sunbelt, where you have growing populations, right? That's a huge difference from the Rust Belt to the Sunbelt. The Rust Belt is shrinking. Voters are leaving the Rust Belt. Pennsylvania lost an electoral vote in 2024 after the 2020 census because they lost so much of their population. While North Carolina gained an electoral vote, Florida gained an electoral vote, Texas gained 2 electoral votes. You barely ever see a state gain 2 electoral votes after a census. Well, Texas did. So these are states where the populations are growing. And just like Texas, that's what happened in the suburbs around Dallas County. More people, you know, from California, from more liberal-minded regions or states around the nation, they are moving to these more conservative areas like the suburbs around Texas. So what you have seen is a massive leftward trend in the state of Texas, but very similar situations. Of course, in Arizona. Arizona might be an even better example because of how important it is as a battleground state. But look at Maricopa County. Arizona was never talked about as a battleground in 12 years ago in 2012 because Maricopa County, by far the most populous county in the state. I mean, they make up the vast majority of the population here, but they voted for Mitt Romney by 11 points. For 8 years later, they'd gone to vote for Joe Biden by 2.2 points. The suburbs are massively shifting leftward towards the Democrats because of this population surge. So while Democrats have relied on the blue wall for so long, apparently Democratic voters especially are leaving these states. The population is shrinking. They're going to become less and less important in these elections. While the Sunbelt, you've got 4, potentially 6 on how you look at it if you include Texas and Florida, but absolutely 4 clear battleground states in the Sunbelt. These states are heavily important, and they're only gaining population, which is what has, caused this surge in support for Democratic Party candidates across these states. So, when it comes to the 2024 election specifically, I really could see a situation where Kamala Harris, despite all these expectations, but despite these, very good polling averages across these Rust Belt states for Kamala Harris. For example, she's ahead by 1.9 in Wisconsin. That's not bad. She's ahead in Michigan as well, by even more, by 2.4%. And she's even ahead in Pennsylvania. It's by a very small margin, or 1.3%. Not too small, actually. But she is ahead in all these states, and she's doing much worse in polling in the Sunbelt states. Donald Trump is currently ahead in Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, as well as, of course, Texas and Florida. She has the lead in Nevada, though. But I could see a situation where Harris really underperforms expectations in the Rust Belt, as Democrats always are overestimated in polling in the Rust Belt region, when she actually outperforms the polls in the Sunbelt. I really could see that reality. I mean, just look at the numbers here. These are set in stone numbers from the Secretaries of State's offices. That shows voter registration. These are, what these percentages show are the increase in voter registration among these key demographics that break heavily towards Democrats typically in a time period in 2024 compared to the same time period in 2020. The week of July 21st, 2020 to July 21st, 2024. So on the low end, you've got young women, voter registration among them. I mean, mind you, this is completely after Harris has become the presumptive Democratic nominee. But young women, voter registration is up 84% compared to 2020. That's absolutely insane. And then you go all the way over to young black women, obviously going to break so heavily towards Kamala Harris come election day. And voter registration among this demographic is almost tripling compared to 2020. I mean, these are actual numbers. These are not polls. And it's something that, of course, we have to think about. I mean, just think, 2020, Joe Biden was able to win in Georgia, in Arizona, and Nevada, and he lost in North Carolina. But when you have this much of a voter registration surge among young black women, young Latinas, which are critical in these very diverse states of Arizona, Georgia, of course, North Carolina, Nevada, Texas, Florida, they're hugely important when you have so much more, when so many more of them, I should say, will turn out in 2024 compared to 2020, it really leads you to believe that these states will go blue. And, again, these are set in stone numbers. These are not polls. These are actual numbers that we can rely on. So it's a very interesting situation. This is my current prediction. I predict a relatively close election with North Carolina flipping, I'll mind you, but also Arizona and Georgia flipping back to Donald Trump. A very interesting map, a map that we don't see a lot. So I'm not fully convinced that Kamala Harris will have this way, outperforming expectations across the Sunbelt states, right? I mean, obviously we don't have enough data to make that case, to make that point or make that prediction. But what I can say is that it is absolutely possible, and we should keep our eyes open to that. Watch out for a situation like that. So thank you all for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe down below. That helps out a lot. Make sure to drop a comment. Sorry, my graphic is loading here. Here we go. Make sure to drop a comment, of course. Let me hear your thoughts. Drop a like as well, and I will see you all next time.